Hey everybody on YouTube and everyone across the Power Rangers fandom, welcome to a brand new PRLostGalaxy2014 toy review on Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Ranger Slayer from the Boom Studios comic continuity. I pre-ordered Ranger Slayer at the time before she started selling out as quick as possible, because like Lord Draken, Ranger Slayer is one of the most high demand figures from this current wave of figures right now, which Wave 5 consists of her, Mighty Morphin Blue, Zeo Gold, and Time Force Red. I will get those figures eventually. However, Ranger Slayer is my first figure of the Mighty Morphin spectrum of the Lightning Collection line, because I wanted to do the Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger before Ranger Slayer, but nah, I decided to do Ranger Slayer first, because right now on Amazon and eBay, Mighty Morphin Pink, that being Kimberly, is very expensive for her at the 5 right now. I know a lot of those are lucky to find Kimberly before her Ranger Slayer counterpart here, but I just wanted to do a review on her figure as Ranger Slayer from that alternate dimension in the Boom comic continuity of Power Rangers. Now I want to do a little blunt history before I open this figure up. Okay. No matter how great those Boom Studio Power Ranger comics is, I know I'm going to get some flack for this even during the comments in the review, but I never really cared for the comics, okay? I've been so busy doing my Power Rangers fan film thing of Lost Galaxy and all, but I just don't have the time for the comics. I have been following stuff with the TV show and when we had the 2017 movie. But the comics, however, I heard Ranger Slayer is from the comics. She debuted in Go-Go Power Rangers issue something. Of course, she had a much pivotal major role in the Shattered Grid saga 2 years ago when Power Rangers celebrated its 25th anniversary in the comics. And she had a anti-hero-ish role as a Pink Ranger in the Beyond the Grid saga with Magda Defender, Andros the Red Space Ranger, Tanya Zeo Ranger 2 Yellow, Cam the Green Samurai Storm Ranger from Ninja Storm, and Heckle as the Dark Ranger from Dino Charge that we wish should have happened on the show, but yet the comics managed to take advantage to make Heckle a Ranger since we didn't get that opportunity in Dino Supercharge. And by the by, Kimberly as the Ranger Slayer, not Kimberly the original Pink Mighty Morphin Ranger in the mainline MMPR in Beyond the Grid, was one of the many Pink Rangers to appear in Beyond the Grid. And also, speaking of which, she also has her, I gotta pull up something specific about, also there's this one-shot comic of Ranger Slayer that is due out July 15th on Free Comic Book Day. At the time I'm talking about this during the review, because I recorded this review June 20th, 2020. At the time of this review, I gotta pull it up. But first, some advertisements on my phone that I'm getting sick and tired of seeing. Yeah, because Ranger Slayer, I really have, what kind of Power Rangers fan am I for not following the comics? Because I've been hearing about these characters a lot to the point I just don't really hardly give a crap about the comics. Okay, now, basically, there is a Free Comic Book Day issue for Ranger Slayer available at our local comic book shop on July the 15th, and I know I may have missed out on doing Free Comic Book Day every time they did some free comics, but I will eventually try to go to my local comic shop if it will be open, despite even with COVID-19 and all that going on right now is open. And then I will probably get my hands on the Ranger Slayer one-shot comic. So I'm ready to open this thing and see how it stands with all the others. Even though this is while Ranger Slayer is a villain technically of sorts, but she's still a Ranger, more like an evil Power Ranger. An evil Power Ranger that later reformed herself, but again, wait until when we get other evil Rangers and evil villains like Psycho Pink, for example. But anyway, let's get on with Ranger Slayer and see how she looks outside of this box. Alright everyone, here's Ranger Slayer outside of her package. And let's look at all of her accessories before we get to the figure. I want to start with this Sword of Darkness based bow, which it takes, you know, in the comics, of course, they had to take 2 of these Sword of Darknesses in order to make this evil sword of, you know, this darkness bow, whatever it's called for Ranger Slayer, because even though I like the way how they did, you know, Hasbro recreated the Sword of Darkness, even though when I get the Fighting Spirit Green Ranger 2-pack and when they do a regular Mighty Morphin Green Ranger, the Sword of Darkness is going to be just like this, but it's just going to be a separate sword as opposed to double it to make it look like a bow for Ranger Slayer to use. And when you look at it, it's actually in good detail, although I mean, I just personally think the way how they did it with the Sword of Darkness on the Legacy figure for the Green Ranger was a little better than that. But I mean Hasbro's version of this of the Sword of Darkness is okay. Then you get her dark and black as heck Blade Blaster, which I don't think she ever used much at all in the comics, but I'll place it inside her holster. Because while the mainline Mighty Morphin Rangers have a Blade Blaster that's red, Ranger Slayer is the only one with a black one. But even though, again, this is only in the comics. Interchangeable hands, again, the karate chop hand, like I keep seeing a lot for a lot of these lightning figures, plus with a bald fist. I don't know what to do with that still. Her lightning piece, which is just a small stringy looking arrow shot lightning piece, which looks pretty good, but from my lighting from the camera, it looks a little magenta than pink, but I guess that's just me. It also looks like the color of purple from Ivan Ooze from the first Power Rangers movie on this thing. Getting some vibes of Ivan with his purple ooze stuff to it. Then the 3-shot arrows. Now, when I think of this, what do you think of? Who do you think of from the Marvel Universe? Wolverine from X-Men. And just when you think about it, it looks a lot like, when I just think about it, like if I had, if this was a little bigger, you know, this would make me think of Wolverine from X-Men. It's a great accessory piece to put to the bow. I mean, I don't know how you do this because, again, I never even know how do you even connect the well, I'll figure it out when I get past this review. And then finally the figure itself, and also I got to put it on the cape. Before I do the figure, then let's look at the cape a little bit real quick. The way how they did the cape, it got this, you know, the way how they sculpted the cape, I know it's rubber and all, but it seems to have this sort of Dracula cape or Sleepy Hollow cape going vibe going for it, but for an evil ranger like Ranger Slayer herself. Now let's look at Ranger Slayer with the cape on, and actually this just looks just right and just perfect on her. And now let's take a good look at Ranger Slayer in all her glory, and I actually like this figure pretty swell. Also, parts of Ranger Slayer's concept based on her costume. Although this is the first character I ever got from the Boom Studio comics, again, this is coming from someone who hasn't read a lot of Boom's Power Ranger comics, because, again, what sorry-ass Power Rangers fan am I for not reading the comics or following anything regarding to the comics according to the fandom, 80% of the fandom. But the thing is, she's alright. I mean, although it's the helmet that makes her different from the Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger, in the MMPR Pink comic. From what I heard, the MMPR Pink comic had a costume of the Pink Ranger just like this, and as well as for the I believe the Black and Yellow Rangers, that being Zack and Trini in those comics for that. But again, this is exactly similar to that costume for her from the comics. But I think what made it so different was the helmet sculpt, to make her different from the regular Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger, making her be all evil looking with the bigger pterodactyl visor and the green eyes. And you can merely, let me put the focus, you can barely make it out with some of the green pterodactyl eyes that's on her helmet a little bit. And yeah, and then see, despite this is my first Mighty Morphin figure from the Lightning collection, my biggest gripe that I'm going to wait for when I also do the rest of MMPR for the Lightning line, the way how they sculpted the morphers on the suits, the Power Morpher on the suit, you know, this is another problem why I prefer the Bandai figures over the Lightning figures on that aspect, is that the Power Morphers are a little too small. But again, that's I mean, I gotta stop saying Bandai. I mean, they don't have this franchise anymore, excuse me. Hasbro, and then that's how Hasbro, again, Hasbro did the Power Morphers on the Mighty Morphin. Ranger Slayer, speaking of which, before we do her weapons and stuff, she has some really great articulation, especially on the legs, something that the legacy figure of the Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger was lacking when I reviewed the legacy figures on MMPR last time, along with the Zeo Rangers. She can do all kinds of great articulation, since unlike the original Pink Ranger, she doesn't have a skirt. And also, parts of Ranger Slayer's costume and her helmet reminds me a lot of the movie Pink Ranger costume from the original Mighty Morphin movie, not the 2017 one, but the original 1995 Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger costume from the original 1995 movie, which is 25 years ago, because come next week, at the time I'm recording the video and when I released it, the first Mighty Morphin movie will be 25 years old come June 30th. I mean, can you believe that? Wow. Let me do a little comparison just to give a gist of what I was talking about with that a little. Now, take a look at, in comparison, about the way how the original Pink Ranger looked with her helmet from the original movie versus how her helmet looks from the comics for Boom Studios' Ranger Slayer. You know, when I think about it, the helmets do look a little similar, because I was getting some vibes of the 1995 movie Pink Ranger from this earlier when it comes to Ranger Slayer's helmet. I think that's what got me, is the way how her helmet is, but it's just the helmet and the visor is a lot bigger as opposed to the 1995 movie Pink Ranger, and the way how they did the pterodactyl helmet in the original Mighty Morphin movie. Okay, let me put her away. Put this away. And as for, okay, now let's see how Ranger Slayer looks with her bow in her hand, because I think, let's see how she looks with her weapon, because, you know, I really need to get into the comics, even though I've been very dismissive and passive-aggressive on the comics lately, simply because, I mean, I like how they are doing the television show much, you know, justice in the comics, taking everything we loved about the show in the main Power Rangers canon in the comics the way they do. But for me, I'm not really much of a fan of how they've been doing the comics, simply because not that I don't like the comics, but I just feel like the way how they're taking stuff we liked from the main universe and main canon and then adding on characters we wish sort of would have been in the series, but due to the fact Power Rangers has to be restricted to the Sentai footage every season, they have to come up with, you know, that's why the Boom Studio Comics had the thing out the box, come up with creative new stories that the TV show never told, while taking elements from the television series and the canon and try to do something new with that material, which I mind them ever doing, because even though, again, I just never was much of a fan of the comics, simply because I felt that when you take making characters like Lord Draken, yeah, these characters look cool in the comic form, but I just feel like, for me, in my opinion, the reason why I just didn't care much for characters like Ranger Slayer and such, because the fandom tends to overblow these characters like they're end-all, be-all, and think they are truly part of the show, knowing the fact they're from, of course, a different continuity outside of the TV show, which is why that's what the comics are for. But when you take familiar characters we know and familiar scenarios, it just feels like they're just doing some balls to the wall fan fiction with some of the stuff they're doing with the characters we know and love, and some characters I hate from certain seasons, and then try to do fanfic-ish in a very official Saban, later Hasbro way with Power Rangers. And I can understand why 80% or more of the Power Rangers fandom loves characters like Ranger Slayer. To me, she's an alright figure, but she's an alright figure, her costume is fine. I mean, I don't have nothing against Ranger Slayer, but I really do like this figure. But I just am not a fan of how overblown the comic continuity is with the fandom. Again, that's just me. You can hate me all you want, put dislikes all you want for it. But she is a great figure. I really like it. And now let's see how, okay, according to the box, her, the lightning piece should be somewhere between her fingers, I think. Because I'm just trying to figure out how to, do that. Because this is my first time owning a Mighty Morphin figure of the Pink Ranger, or a version of the Pink Ranger in the line of Hasbro's toys. And even though this, you know, when I do a review on the regular Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger, the lightning piece for it, and also when she has the power bow, is going to be very different as opposed to Ranger Slayer with the Sword of Darkness. You know, the Sword of Darkness as a bow, as a double-sided bow, and then this lightning piece being the center piece of it. And then this is how she is also. She has some really great movements. If only if I can do some certain incredible posings with her. If only if I had a figure stand to do this kind of great stuff with her. Yeah. And then of course, now where to place this piece on the, I don't know where to put it, because it should be on the okay, I mean, I think I'm putting the bow the wrong way, you know, having the bow the wrong way. Is it supposed to go this way when she shoots arrows? Also, Ranger Slayer is a playable character in Power Rangers Legacy Wars and Battle for the Grid. And man, I can't believe that, just to go show how immensely popular her character really is in this, you know, in this stuff. Because, I mean, I never really was a fan of her character, but her action figure looks pretty awesome. In my opinion, because she just does. Because I don't really know how to do this, because this is coming from someone who is more into the main stuff of the series and so forth, not much into the comic stuff, even though, again, the comic characters are what they are. I mean, I'm not going to judge, I'm not going to be completely critical about it and then have people lobbing me about how great her character is. And okay, so it seems like when I shoot, you know, when I have her in a shoot arrow position, I don't think I'm doing it right. Okay, so it seems like when I have her standing like this, I mean, this is how she would shoot arrows, but then how am I going to have it, like, yeah, something like that when I do a standing position with her shooting an arrow. Yeah, and also, every time I play Legacy Wars, every time I fight someone using Ranger Slayer, I'm always getting my butt kicked. Because I guess, you know, this is coming from someone who's just not a fan of the comics or the characters from the comics. Even though, wait until when they do Solar Ranger. I know I heard Psycho Green is coming out for the Lightning Collection, guys. But it's just some of the characters, it's just, there's some characters from the comics I'm just not a big fan of. Maybe the Omega Rangers, but again, I gotta read the comics and catch up and see how they did Jason, Trini, and Zach's transition from the regular red, black, and yellow Rangers to the Omega Rangers, and see how the Omega Rangers are in the comics, because this is coming from someone who is 4 years behind from following the comic book continuity of Power Rangers. So yeah, Ranger Slayer, all I can say is, I gotta end the review because the battery is going down. All I can say is Ranger Slayer, okay. All I can say is Ranger Slayer is a great figure. I highly recommend it for those who are fans of the Boom Studio comic continuity. I just collected it because I just wanted to get something going for MMPR in my collection, and as well as, you know, the entirety of Power Rangers and what have you. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I know I've been a little critical on Ranger Slayer and the comic stuff lately in this video, so okay. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys with another Power Rangers review and other toy reviews to come on the channel and wherever else in the world. Thanks for watching.